So, hi everybody, it's T. Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Oracle of the Self. Today we are going to be doing the interpretation of the exploration 4 topic, which was building relationships that matter. And uh, because today is the day of the eclipse, I've not gotten as many responses as I would normally like to get. And also, we recently switched over to Patreon. And so I think a lot of the people who signed up for the new Patreon free account forgot to check their mail or whatever, because that's now how we communicate with people is through Patreon. Anywho, bottom line is that we're going to start the interpretation today. For those that are listening to the recording, if you've not already filled out that profile, you will find the link to the profile in the description block below this video. So with that, let's go ahead and get into this. I was perusing beforehand, so let me go ahead. Oh, by the way, a reminder for everybody. Remember that until we have more than 26 people on one of our profiles, you're going to be able to see the names of who's plotted. In order to protect your anonymity, go ahead and create a fake name. No one's going to follow you. No one's going to try to contact you. So be clever. Again, the only thing that when you're filling it out, you have to make sure is always spot on correct is the email address, or you won't receive your results. So make that right, but you can use whatever fake name you want. So today we're joined by Frank and Honest. I like that. Kathy, by the way, all Kathy did was adjust her name slightly. And so that's all good. So you guys can do anything you want to do if you want to protect your anonymity. On the other hand, if you just want to be loud and proud, well, then I can definitely give you the guidance that you might be looking for.
Yeah, if I didn't know the crowd, I probably would do that. But for me, this is a safe space for exploration. But kind of like I'm not involved on social media, but if I were, I definitely would not
Well,
want.
just remember these videos do end up on YouTube. And so I
Yeah,
don't know,
but
by now they're probably viewed what, 1 million, 2 million times a week.
yeah,
Don't you wish?
yeah, but I don't know those people, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever. And for all they know, Brian Sykes is a fake name.
exactly,
So there you go. All right,
exactly.
anyway, what I'd like to do is just do a quick go through the results, and let's see which of these activities we think we need to take a closer look at. So I'll go ahead and put on the first one. Again, this is for building relationships that matter. And by the way, if you guys didn't attend the last session or didn't listen to the recording of the last session, that's when we did a slow walk through the activity list and explained what we meant by each one of these activities. The first of which was taking inventory of the relationships in my life. So I've chosen that activity. I'll ask to view the change grid. And so here we are. Now, again, just so everyone knows what you're looking at, that diamond represents the desired location. This diamond is where we want people to be on the change grid as far as this activity is concerned. That ideal spot for this particular activity of doing an inventory is an analytical driver. So this quadrant right here, subquadrant right here, is the analytical driver energy. So the analytical driver energy is trying to make something happen, but the way they're working towards making things happen by progressing, etc., is by looking at a detail, looking at something that requires some analysis, some thought. And so
Mm.
that's ideally where we'd like you to be. The triangle represents the average rating of those of you who have filled this out. And so keep in mind that very rarely when you're looking at a small population result, does the average represent any specific person, right? Because there's no letter here. This nobody is here. And so it doesn't do us any good to talk about the average because it really isn't going to resonate with anyone who's there. And so for a small population, it's kind of fun to take a look at where some of these people fly. So again, I just want to click through the whole set before we come back to it. And you guys get to kind of take physical note or mental note, if you will. Do you want to take a deeper look at this one? Oh, and by the way, everyone should know this. You are one of these letter characters. So Brian, for example, you're B, and David, you're A, and you're right in the exact center of the change grid when it comes to taking inventory on
Yeah.
this. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. Why do you
Well, I,
feel
I just
balanced
I
about it?
just thought that that would be a good space to view from, give me the least um, um, noise.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, yeah.
mhm, mhm.
Well,
I
and
like that.
the only thing that we would suggest, and again, this is kind of an advanced concept. So if you guys are brand new to all things tension management or change works, just ignore the next 20 seconds. But I'd like you to be leaning a little way, you know. So if you think about
Uh-huh.
even when we're in the center of this wonderful area on the change grid, where everything's in balance and harmony, we really aren't doing anything at that spot. The moment we start thinking about doing something, now we're between that spot and the green circle, right?
Mhm.
And so that's where you're getting ready to do something. And so when I think about an activity that requires some degree of thought, contemplation, pondering, anything like that, I think I'm experiencing an analytical energy with a purpose behind it. So even if you're just slightly further out grid here, you may find that that's a more supportive place.
So
Uh,
may I ask why in terms of the desired location for this, why is the challenge that high? That seems to be kind of high.
Well, because I believe that doing a thorough inventory of all of the relationships in your life is more complex than people think it is. I think that when we're talking about taking inventory, it's just not making a list of all the people or opening up your contact list on your computer or whatever, your Christmas
Right,
card list. It really is more about saying, like, wait, where is this relationship right now? So,
right,
what is it really all about? I'm describing it as a relationship, but what do I even mean by that relationship? Is this just friendship? Is there something more purposeful in our spending time together? Like I have relationships with people that I work with. Well, that's a very different relationship. So I need to take a little bit of an inventory. And if you guys were working with us as a coaching client, we would break this into a lot more detail and say that what are we looking for when we do this thing called taking inventory? And we
hmm
might have some ideas to share with you as coaches and consultants. But ultimately, the question is, what do you think about? What do you look at when you're taking inventory of the relationships in your life? So what are those? And that gets into then about your values, beliefs, those
right,
sorts of things. So,
right.
but that's it. So the reason why I say it's a challenge, and by the way, 8 is hardly, no one's losing sleep at night because the ability of a 10 and a challenge of an 8. If
Right.
anything, their ability exceeds the challenge. And so they're slightly mellow, but keep in mind, they're only slightly down grid from that heart line going directly through the center of the change grid where everything's in balance. And so we want someone to take those wonderful analytical skills they've developed and really look at the relationships. But yeah, don't let it be a 2. I promise you, the inventory is going to be, I'm going to say, incomplete and inaccurate. So I'm not going
Yeah.
to be that far down grid around it.
I was thinking for that particular one, like it's something that I do regularly. So I can see here that my perceived ability is aligned, but I didn't see it as challenging just because it's something I do regularly and I kind
Well,
of walk the
and that may
path.
be. And again,
Yeah.
the question becomes then, if you were plotting down grid, still keep your ability as a 10, nice solid ability, but you're saying, like, well, no, the challenge of doing it isn't even a 6 anymore. So individual B gave it a, yeah, Brian, that's you. So you're
Yeah.
considering it to be a 6. That's not far away from where we're going. You're still on the
Right.
border between analytical and driver and analytical. It's just a little bit more mellow. That being said, I would say to you that if we look at the engagement rings layer, this has
Mm-hmm.
just become a rather advanced reading, hasn't it? Oh, well, it happens. Um, as when you're where we're suggesting you're out here in full engagement. Well,
Ah,
you've slipped down into intention, and that may mean that you aren't putting as much attention to detail, or perhaps that you have opportunity for increasing your attention to detail and haven't really availed yourself of that opportunity quite yet. But bottom line, things are slipping into a place of comfort. And our point, I mean, it is the first activity on the list, is that
Mhm.
this is not something that should be taken lightly. This is where it
Mhm.
all starts. Yeah.
Right. Got
Okay.
it.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Any questions, thoughts about this particular activity?
I
Or
want an award for being in the desired location. It never happens.
well, okay. Well, now remember this, that the change grid actually reveals potentials and readiness. Remember, the change grid answers 4 questions about a particular situation you're evaluating. Those 4 questions are: how ready are you to do it? The answer is you're very ready to do it. We do there at E. So the second thing is, how engaged are you in doing it? This shows that you have the potential to be very engaged in doing it. The likelihood of following through and getting it done, very strong here. The type and level of support that you need to get you on track and keep on track. That's where the opportunity is for us to ask the question. So, Kathy, are you doing all this stuff? Are you really exercising that potential? Is the potential manifesting into action or not so much? And you would say,
Yeah, I think I do this
yeah,
on a regular basis, but
yeah,
I do think it's hard. I mean, it takes energy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that's it, because we want to say, well, wherever you're plotting on the change grid, this bodes very, very well for you doing that activity and doing it very well. The fourth question, again, is what type and level of support you need. And the answer is none, because you have, I mean, anyone can always, benefit from having a little bit of encouragement and all that. But, no, you're fine. It's something that you can do and you do well. And there you are keeping it. So this is the ideal location. And you are, resonating with that particular spot.
Thank you, T, for being so kind about that. I had to make a joke. I'm sorry.
Well, no, 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 because I think there's important learning in that for everyone involved. Because think about this for just a second. What if when I said, are you actually doing it? You said, no.
Hmm.
There's a lot of times that people out there that are very ready to do it. They can be very engaged mentally and not be engaged physically, right? Um,
Right.
yeah, and then there is a strong likelihood, but it's based on your potential. And there's when people say, no, I can't do it, what I know they need is either someone to move their tension up a little bit, because maybe for whatever reason, the um, the activity as stated, let's do this, taking inventory of the relationships in my life. Let's say we say, well, what if that's the activity, but you aren't following through and doing it? Then maybe is making sure that I'm taking inventory of the relationships in my life. And so
Right.
that making sure is a different verb, which is a different ideal location on the change grid. I might move you right up to 10-10. I might move
Right.
here to 10 and 9. Sorry, there's 10-10. So I might want to move you a little more outgrid or a little more upgrid if you said, I've got all this potential, but for whatever reason, I'm not following through and really doing what it is that I need to do.
Hmm.
So now those are the strong background in change management. You know that what I've just said is a combination of a little bit of an outgrid maneuver. I'm trying to get you more engaged, take the risk, step up. I believe in you, all those good kinds of outgrid messages, and a little bit of upgrid as well, boosting a little bit of accountability. In this particular case, it'd be more about accountability to oneself. So
That's a
again, this
great
again,
point, though. It's a really good point because you can take inventory in your head. You
yeah,
say, "Oh, yeah, I know these people that I probably should take a look at." But then, like to Kathy's point, actually sitting down to do it, to
yeah.
analyze the details, that's more work.
It is more work. And I will say that I find that people who are very, very busy tend to do this activity more than people who aren't busy. And the reason
Mm,
for that is because all these relationships that might be in your life, how many of them are actually bringing value? How many are actually mutually beneficial? How many of them are just clutter? And
Mm,
so if you're always going like, I need more time, I'm not able to do this, that, blah, 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 you may very well look at go like, so I'm not going to go to my networking group next week, or I think I'm going to skip going to whatever this event is, or do I really need to go on 2 hour long breakfast 3 times a week? You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
So I think people that are busy have a more natural tendency to take inventory of relationships. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah. That also means, by the way, that they're more likely to have what I want to say, the challenges of managing relationships because they don't want to offend anybody. And so a lot of times they continue to be pulled into things they really don't want to do or really aren't the best use of their time and energy, but because, they don't, there's other issues in play. And one of those issues is most definitely not wanting to upset anybody, not wanting to turn something that's really little into something big. Is it easier to just gaslight the person or is it, ghost the person? I don't know. But I'm saying that people who are very busy have a much more, what do I say, routine relationship with taking
Yeah,
inventory, but they have their own set of aftermath issues that have to be dealt
exactly. I'm smiling because I go through this every year. Like LinkedIn is the only social media I do, and so I go through getting rid of people off the list that I haven't interacted with. I'm like, what are we linked for? And so oftentimes, like recently, I just got a message from someone who's
with.
like, I thought I was in your network, and somehow I'm not any longer. So
Oh, yeah.
I was like telling them, well, I didn't, we haven't done any connecting or anything worthwhile. So it's like I
Right.
clean it out
Yeah.
all the time. I was
Well,
trying to find the best way to say that to them because
yeah, well, I think the other thing is to recognize what's really driving that behavior. So, for example, if you've got people who want to follow you on whatever social platform it happens to be, and you know they're not scammers. I mean, that's not there are plenty of scam things that are going on as well. I understand kicking those people out of your group or whatever, but not all fruit ripens at the same time. That may very well be, someone I was listening to something a couple of days ago, and what they were basically saying is think of your prospects. It was a sales discussion. Think of your prospects as being cicadas and
mm,
recognize that depending on what type of cicada they may spend a couple of years underground, they may spend a decade underground. But when they
mm,
come out, they're going to come out with full energy and full whatever. And so the whole point was that, not everything's going to happen at the same time. So if they don't represent a threat to your group, well, why not have the followers?
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to comment on that too. I mean, I
Mhm.
love what you said about not all fruit ripens at the same time. I think that's an incredibly, I don't know, wonderfully descriptive way to do it because I know that there are many relationships I'm just not ready to engage in, even if I have the connection,
Yeah,
like on LinkedIn or whatever. I don't do a lot. I do very little social media, but I also know that I change and circumstances change,
yep,
and those people, and so do they.
yeah, of
And
course.
so, there may be a time when that connection really makes sense for me for whatever reason, emotional, whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, the point I tried to make when I was doing sales training programs and talking about this concept is that today's apathy could be tomorrow's power stress. We
Mm,
don't know what's going on with that prospect. Maybe right now they've got so many other things going on that are commanding more of their immediate attention. But down the road, a week, a couple of days, whatever it is, who knows? Their apparent apathy today could very well be power stress tomorrow or even stress tomorrow, right?
hmm.
So we don't know. So Brian, I would suggest to you that if you really need to free up time, that you might want to just stop uncluttering your list. They're not hurting you, and you're spending time doing it. So
You,
But yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
yeah.
Something to
Plus, if you
consider.
ever want any of the platforms to promote whatever it is that you're putting up, they are looking for the number of followers that you have.
Yeah, I
So
don't have followers. I do it with the connections themselves, like
that doesn't
people
matter. In
who,
the world of LinkedIn, connections are followers.
Yeah, I
because
seen that
you're
they
all
have like the
integrated.
followers, they have the like people say they can follow you or something once you're
Yep.
connected. So I didn't know if those are the same or not.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. It's the same purpose. The more followers that you have, the more legitimate you appear, which means that your posts may be considered to be more noteworthy or more interesting to share with other people, because ultimately LinkedIn is trying to build its own membership. And so how does it do that? It
Right.
engages people by sharing certain things from other people's, profiles, announcements. Usually it's just the chat stuff. Anyway,
The worst one I think is Snapchat. I went on. The thing of it is that it keeps crowding my telephone,
oh my,
and it just is awful. It says you have 20 people with this person. Well, I don't know that person.
right,
You
right,
know,
right.
I just find it the worst.
It is really strange, but I think each of these different platforms appeal to a different audience for a different
Mm-hmm.
reason.
Mm-hmm.
And who was talking about? I think it was Brian or Edie probably that was talking about that. Ultimately, social media is about dopamine release.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever they see that their followers have gone up or whatever, their members or whoever, they get a little rush. And the thing about Snapchat, at least as it originally was, is that the images didn't remain forever, right? They were something that would
Mm-hmm.
appear and then they would fade. And so there was this sense of urgency about always being connected to the platform for fear of missing out on something that someone's going to post, but it won't be there. And I don't know what the time frame was, but yeah, I'm sure they brought.
Interesting.
Okay, anywho, it's amazing we've been talking about this activity for half an hour. Let's take, I don't care what we're gonna. So let's take a look at the next little activity, which was rating each relationship as to the degree of satisfaction you're experiencing. So
Mm.
now let's take a look at it, see how this one looks. Now, let me go back to the composite change grid background image. Again, this is an analytical driver activity. Again, drivers out here, analyticals right here. Because look at what it is. It's about rating something. So the moment you got to do any kind of calculation, well, you're in an analytical mode. So a driven analytical, wanting to accomplish something. Rating each relationship as to the degree of satisfaction you're experiencing. Now, David is again in the middle, and we got everybody else that's still, you guys are plotting in a very similar way. Now, I would have said for the last activity and for this activity as well, is that based on where you guys are all plotting, I think you're doing just fine. I don't know if we want to do a deep dive into it, but we seem to be doing deep dives. In this particular case, I think it's interesting that Kathy, letter E, actually found it to be more challenging, still a very strong ability, no mistake about it. But for some reason, rating each relationship as to the degree of satisfaction you're experiencing felt a bit more challenging than just doing the inventory itself.
I can see that. I can see
Okay, tell
that.
us why do you think that might be the case? And then we'll ask Kathy to actually share if she wants.
Because each and you see when I go through these lists, like I say, each one is uniquely different, and
Yeah.
so and the value for me at least isn't an end product as it is the potential creating value, and so I'm looking at a whole criterion of things, and so I can see that being more work for me. The list itself, because I have a very small list, I'm very strategic in people whom I connect with.
Mhm.
Because I was never interested in having, gazillion followers or friends. That I don't even get into that. But I'm very strategic, so it's a small list, but it takes work to really understand. And some of this is dealing with like actual interviews. Like I do interviews with people, and I'm talking to them. We do virtual meetings, that kind of thing. So there's a lot that goes into that idea of
Right,
rating for me.
right. But keep in mind that when we're talking about these relationships you took inventory of, some of them
Hmm.
may very well be in the realm of business or profession or whatever. But I know you got a bunch of sisters, am I right?
Sisters and
Okay.
brothers,
So
and they're
rating,
on that list as well.
yeah, rate those. And so do you find, okay, where are you? You're B. Okay. So yeah, again, you're giving the challenges about a 6, and we're saying even an 8 would be sharper. So this is a very strong location to be there. I just brought up the sisters to say that there's what we really are looking at here is satisfaction. And when I
Right.
ask you guys, how satisfied are you with something? Do you think that doing an assessment of your personal satisfaction is something that requires tremendous deep thought and belief, or do you immediately know, like, yes, it is, or no, it's not?
Mm-hmm.
So
More
we're
that way.
it's a,
Exactly.
yeah, it's more of a reflexive kind of thing. It's like when someone says, "Does your relationship with so and so meet your needs?" And my
Mm-hmm.
answer, I can tell you right away, is either going to be yes or no. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, so that's what I'm just saying. Like, this is not as much of an analytical activity in terms of doing a detailed inventory. There's just a quick rating. Is it or is it not meeting well, I'm going to say your needs, your desired outcome, yeah,
Mm.
level of satisfaction. All right, easy enough. Yeah, thoughts. All right. So take a look at another one. Again, I don't think anyone's plotting in a problematic kind of play. Oh, no, Kathy, I was asking you, why is it
Yeah.
that that seems more challenging?
It's interesting. I'm listening to the conversation, and I think, yeah, you're probably right, and I'm someone who operates a lot by gut feel.
Yeah.
I think it's the notion of rating against
Mhm.
relationships against one another because they meet very different needs of mine.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing at any one time in my life right now is in a lot of transition. And so, at any one time, people pop up in different places.
Sure.
And it requires me to really kind of center and say, where am I now? And
Yeah.
so
You
for
know,
me, that's why the challenge was high. No, I mean normally it's like no, it's kind of a gut response, but
yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
just where I am right now.
Well, I think you bring up a really interesting point that could actually turn into an interesting exercise for someone to do as they're doing that, because I use the verb rating, but it sounds like for you there's an element of ranking, and the ranking of
There
some.
might maybe that was how I was reading it.
Yeah, because I can certainly see that ranking the relationships as to the degree of satisfaction I'm experiencing could be very, well, it's not flexible isn't the right word, but it could be changing anytime, anyway. That seems to be something that's not quite settled. Where the rating here, it's like, well, I was going binary. You're either there, it's either meeting your needs or it's not. But you could give it,
Yeah.
you
See,
could,
I was more ranking than
yeah,
rating.
yeah. See, that's why, again,
Interesting.
this is the power of the verb. And
Hmm.
so, but you guys did something that, again, this is hardly for beginners to the subject matter, but hey, welcome to our madness. What you guys both did then is what we call tension override. So the activity, as stated, triggered a thought process in you that ultimately it grabbed your attention, if you will. It grabbed your focus, and you ended up thinking about it and rating it, or giving your assessment based on the verb that you conceived of instead of the one that's written. That's why
Yeah.
when we're doing an individual change grid reading, it's very important for the professional to always be asking the client, what did you mean by that? As you fill this out, what were you thinking? So we can determine if tension override actually occurred. In a group profile, obviously, that becomes increasingly difficult because, sometimes the groups are thousands of people.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So, yep. Other thoughts about rating versus ranking? Oh, by the way, I was going to say you could also rate them on a 5-point scale. So I'll give this one an A right now for meeting my, or for the satisfaction I'm experiencing. This one gets a C plus. So you guys could also use that. For us, the important thing is that you're pausing for a moment and just thinking, is this relationship meeting my needs? So quite honestly, whatever rating you ultimately give it is not as important as the fact that you gave thought to it. All right. So that's what these are always about. The whole point of a change grid. Again, this is the oracle of the self. So it's about understanding the conversations that you are having with you about you. And tension override is something that definitely is an interesting thing to look at. So let's take a look at the next activity. This is sorting relations. Let's zoom in on this. Sorting relationships into advance the relationship, curtail the relationship, or continue the relationship buckets. So, so let's take a look at how you guys rated on that one. Let's view the change grid. All right, now we got more of a scatter pattern. So the range between the highest rating and the lowest rating someone gave is getting to be quite the spread. So yeah. That's a 6-point difference in perceived challenge. Okay, so again, this is about saying, when I think about this particular relationship, and I know it's absolutely meeting it meets my satisfaction. I'm very satisfied with it. Do you think I'm likely to want to advance, curtail, continue? What bucket do you think I'm going to put that relationship in?
Advance.
Advance, and if not advance, because I might like it just the way it is, I might just continue it, right? So I'm going to go to the continue bucket or the advance bucket.
Probably continue, or could it be both?
Well, it could be
or
both.
does it have to be one?
You know what? There are no buckets in reality. You can have as many buckets as you want. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it's about, again, the thought process, because if you go like, that relationship isn't meeting my needs at all, I am totally dissatisfied and it's getting worse by the week. Well, you think I'm going to tell you that you want to advance, continue, or curtail that?
Curtail immediately.
Curtail that. Now, again, as we talked about last time around when we were going over the activity list, I said sometimes it's just not practical, perhaps not even possible, to curtail the relationship, because one way or another, you're stuck with that person. So whether it's a family member or a coworker over whom you have no authority whatsoever, sometimes you just have to do that. So someone thought, well, maybe we need to have another bucket, and that bucket would be endure. And I thought, how many of you would like to have an endure bucket? Do I really want a bucket filled with people I have to endure? So, but I like the idea. So yeah, Brian, you can have as many buckets as you want.
Thank you.
But for most people, we'd say, well, we want to curtail that. Now, this is important because if you guys are, again, it's the oracle of the self. If you're going to help yourself with this, you need to realize that perhaps the great many of these relationships that you have are meeting your needs. You are satisfied with them to a certain degree that makes them well worth continuing and perhaps even advancing. I'm going to hope that most of your relationships are there. But let's say that you realize there's a relationship that is taking far more of your time than it's returning to you in value. We would say you need to curtail that. Notice it doesn't say abruptly stop. It just says curtail it. See what you can do to just back it up. Now, back it up. Curtail is a pretty strong word. So you're backing it off with great intention. But nevertheless, you don't necessarily have to eliminate it altogether, at least not all at once. And so, yeah, it's not meeting your needs. It's consuming your time and energy. That would go into the curtail bucket. It's important for you to know that, because ultimately, the real work of, look what this says, building relationships that matter. It's about creating space for you to be able to advance and continue the relationships that are giving you the level of satisfaction that you want or need. So that's what it's all about. The work is with the curtail. Okay. Questions about, oh, well, let's see where you guys are. So, okay, Kathy's up there with 8 for an ability, 10 for challenge. We're just, again, saying 10 and 8. This is an analytical driver activity. But let's see, Brian, you slipped down 1 point. You think it's even easier to throw them into a bucket?
Probably so, just because there are standards and then there are Brian standards, and so a lot of times
Yeah.
that's kind of easy to do. I should
Yeah.
say. We're not
Well,
as
and I
stringent.
think we all have our own list of, Brian standards. We got our own standards. We're applying all that. I could build a case, by the way, that activity number 3 is a way of doing activity number 2.
Hmm.
But it really
In
is a
what
more
way?
important step. I think of number 2 as being more about creating, like 1 and 2 are more about creating awareness in your mind about these relationships and where they're at. When you get into activity number 3, sorting them, you're going from awareness into a little bit more of an action. Maybe it's just an exercise that you're doing just to help you get your thoughts squared around, but you're now doing something. You're becoming more engaged, and you'll see that's where I really want you to be engaged around this. Now, interestingly enough, Kathy, I don't know if this was just where you happen to plot, but notice that Kathy is in a very similar spot when it comes to engagement, fully engaged, but she's in upgrade engagement. So again, let me change the background image. La 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 da, 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 da. Yep. So she's up here, upgrade engagement. We're saying the ideal location is downgrade engagement. So think about this though. They are in many ways equal to one another in terms of engagement. When someone is in upgrade engagement, they're far more, want to say, animated around it because they've got that upgrade energy. They've got that expressive energy going on. So there's more feeling that's involved with something. There's more the motivation. Really wanting to do it well, do it now, whatever. And this location for the ideal location, same intensity of engagement, but this is the way that a scientist is engaged at a microscope. It's quiet. It's very focused. It's detailed in what it's trying to do. It's more of an inwardly directed type of engagement than an outwardly directed type of engagement.
Interesting.
And so that's an interesting thing to explore as well. Okay, thoughts, comments about any of this?
This is really good.
Yep, David's moved out a little bit. He's in full intention now. Excellent. Welcome. All right, let's take a look at the next activity. See where we're at. This is walking the path of self-discovery for each relationship that matters. Again, for those who are new to the material, if you go onto our Patreon, you'll find lots of resources to learn what we mean by path of self-discovery. And there's tons of videos up about it on our YouTube channel. But let's take a look at the where this all falls. Oh, look at this. You guys are really getting close here. Really getting close here. Now, again, David, I'm going to ask you something about where you're plotting this far in grid. Are you thinking that this is the ideal location where you should be doing these things from, or are you actually there? So again, this activity is walking the path for each relationship that matters. The only reason why I'm bringing that up is because I know that you've been around the world of tension management and all that for almost as long as Linda and I have been married. So, it's got to be more than 20 years by now, right? Yeah, it's got to be 20 couple of years, 20 few years. So I know that you've got a stronger ability to walk the path than a 6. So
Right.
yeah, so I'm kind of wondering, did you have a different thought in mind as you went about answering?
No, I just think I wasn't focused.
All right. If you're not focused, being in the center of the change grid is a good place to be because you're just allowing things to be. And that means something else was demanding your attention. And so, and I'm sure there's been plenty of that in recent days, where your attention is focused on like client activity or, family issues or whatever the case may be. So I've always loved the center of the change grid. Let me switch the background layer for just a second. Center of the change grid, right there in the middle where you are, this is where total balance is. So there is kind of a sense of detachment from that. I also noticed that you rated the importance as only moderate for doing this. That's why it's orange instead of red. And so this may very well be evidence that this set of activities is on hold for right now.
Could be.
And it may very well be simply because, if you got a whole list of other things that need to be done and need to be done today, like in 11 minutes, we're supposed to see this eclipse. Although we're in Phoenix, I don't think we're going to see so much as a shadow. But nevertheless, it's all happening. There's lots of things that are demanding our attention on a given day, and it may very well be that right now there's just not room to deal with all these. So I don't mind applauding when someone's in the center of the change grid.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. And by the way, if you guys want to do an exercise on actually taking a relationship and walking through the path, I'm happy to do that for you guys as well. Okay, number 5, let's take a look. In this particular case, this is all about determining the value of investing further in a relationship. So when I see investing further, I know that if you just want to continue the relationship, there's still a certain use of your time and your resources and your energies that's going to get involved in maintaining that relationship. So it has to have enough value for you even continue it. And certainly to advance it, it had better have some really strong value waiting for you if you make that investment. So again, determining the value of investing further in a given relationship. So let's go back to the composite change grid. And you guys can see where you're all plotting. So again, this is an analytical driver activity. Again, drivers, this quadrant out here. And so drivers want to accomplish something, they want to do something. The secondary energy, in this case, analytical, describes how we go about doing this activity, getting this activity done. And so it's an analytical activity. Again, we're trying to determine value of investing. I can't use more analytical leaning sorts of words. Individual D, Tom, is right where we would ideally hope someone should be. David, notice that you've moved off center. So
Yes.
that's really that there's something about this particular activity that got you out of your green circle, got you back into
Yep.
life. So something about that is going on, determining the value of investing further in a relationship. Now, again, this program is the oracle of the self. It really is about you applying this to your own life. So I imagine most of what you might be thinking about relationship wise are interpersonal relationships as opposed to professional relationships. However, a lot of times people that are working in an occupation where sales is required and sales energy has to be put out, marketing energy has to be put out, social media energy has to be put out. They spend a lot of time thinking about and maybe even running math around, is that worth continuing to do? Would I be better off if I put more energy into it, etc.? So it is a very analytical kind of an activity. There is a puzzle to be sorted out. Thoughts about that?
Oh, that all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Now, most of you guys, you're all in the right cluster. It's like I'm never concerned if someone is one little point away from what we think is ideal. But I noticed, Brian, when it comes to this, you gave your ability an 8. We want you to be a 10, but the challenge is only a 5. So you have almost double the ability that challenge here requires. So tell us a little bit about why you find determining the value of investing further in a relationship. Well, I'm just going to say relatively easy. And notice you're further in grid than the main plotting. Let me zoom in a little bit. So you're further on the in-grid side of things. You're further to the left, and there's an interesting little river that travels between you and everybody else. Well, this reflects, the timeline. Oh my goodness, the heart line is a reflection of the level of drive we have about something, the level of risk orientation we are willing to juggle, etc. And so you're on the conservative end of things. I mean, you're still out grid, but nevertheless, only by half of a point. So this is something that you're more, you find easy, but you're also more conservative about it.
Yeah, more contemplating. So like when I'm thinking about the buckets that I came up with in terms of whether it's family relationships, and particularly when I think about these activities as I'm doing them, they're very contextual and I put in a personal experience. So I'm thinking about the role of like influencing the kind of change that I want to see in healthcare. So many of those relationships came up, and there's some unknown variables that I was like, I really don't know. And so I need some more kind of workings, if you will. And so I just felt like I have to be a little bit more conservative or more exercise more caution than if I were
Right.
to just put them in the bucket of like, oh, I'm just going to curtail it or something like that. And
Yeah.
so
Well,
I
let
didn't
me
have
throw
a
the,
determining criterion, I
yeah,
guess.
let me throw this out as kind of a coaching question. So do you think the reason why you might be a little bit conservative compared to your colleagues here is because you view your ability as being 2 points lower?
It could be because I know the ability is probably higher, but in the moment when I was
Yeah.
doing it, based on those, it wasn't. It didn't feel like it.
Well, and this, the grid does reflect that. Again, you're plotting inside of the green circle. So again, for all of you that have already gone through training and those of you that are going through it at this very moment, recognize that action really begins once we're outside of the green circle.
Mm-hmm.
Inside of the green circle, we're in our own mind, we're in our own little world. We might be thinking about things and feeling about things and even maybe doing a little bit of planning and all that sort of stuff, but we're not necessarily as we say, living life. We're not really out there doing the things where life happens. So where you are is you're still in your green circle, but you're down grid in the green circle, and that
Mm-hmm.
is more of, as you've described it, like, well, let's wait and see, and we'll see how it all
Mm-hmm.
turns out, and we'll keep an eye on it. But right now, I don't need to be too concerned about the whole thing.
What's the role for that? Is that a advocator, thinker? What is
You would
the
be, yeah, if
role
I
for that
switch
one?
to, let's go to that thing. Let's go to the role layer. And by the way, for those of you who are practitioners, you have access to your ChangeWorks, your own online ChangeWorks system. All I'm doing is changing the background image. So you can do this on your own change grids whenever you want. You're super close to advocator. You're that thinker, look where you're at. You're right on the little border of advocator and thinker. So I would say you've got a very strong chance of being a thinker leaning towards advocator. Again, you're inside of the green circle, so nothing's happening yet. But in your thoughts, you're going like, I understand this, and maybe, just maybe, someone should do something. So I wouldn't be all
Mm-hmm.
surprised to hear hints of advocator in whatever dialogue you have around it.
Interesting. And
Yeah,
I have had dialogues a lot in my head. I have a whole committee.
I'm sure you do. Sure you do. Where everybody else is just getting her done. They're getting her done.
Yeah.
And by the
Uh,
way, if I pulled you out of the average pool, you would this triangle would shift uh, considerably further out grid, so it might actually be right on top of that. See, where you're plotting has pulled the whole thing down and in. And so there it is. So on behalf of all of your fellow respondents, it's kind of like, come on, buddy, you can do it. Let's do it. All
I
right.
need to
Stop
consult,
thinking.
consult.
Stop thinking. And you're advocating for something we're already doing. So
Gotcha.
join
Got
in,
it.
join in, join in. Okay, we got
Join the
time for one
party.
more. Let's take a look at number 6 here. Ensuring that your relationships are meeting your needs. Now, this is somewhat related to activity number 2, rating each relationship as the degree of satisfaction you're experiencing. But that verb makes all the difference. I don't want you to rate it anymore. I want you to ensure that it's happening. Can you feel that that verb is far more definitive? So this is
Yeah.
about you making sure that every relationship you have is meeting your needs. Now, as we talked about last time around, yeah, even better is if it's a mutually beneficial relationship, but it makes no sense whatsoever for you to be in a relationship with someone and their needs are being met, but your needs aren't being met. And so you got to make sure, if you're going to fill your life with a relationship schedule, please make sure that they're meeting your needs. And again, there's always exceptions. If you've got children, you've got children. And so You know, that relationship may not be meeting your need in the moment for a little bit of quiet, but you know,
Mhm.
there it is. You created it. So there you go. All right. So let's see where you guys are when it comes to ensuring that your relationships are meeting your needs. All right. Now you guys are all passengers on the same bus. So let's go ahead and look at the composite change grid here for just a second so we can see what's going on. I want you guys to be driven drivers, amiable driven drivers to be specific. So I'd like you to be very focused on making sure this activity happens. So I've talked about this before. 10, when you're plotting a 10-10 as an ideal location, I'm saying that you need to serve a role in your own life, in your own mind as a what? Does anyone remember what word I might have used for that? This is where the guardian in you needs to live. So
Mm.
this is okay, way out here in the outgrid danger zone. This is the abyss. And we need someone standing there as a guardian at the gate that just says, no, you shall not pass, for bad things happen if it does, you know. So we want to get you out here where you can, but let's not step into harm's way. Get the idea? So
Mhm.
now you guys are really darn close. Everybody is within 2 points of right along. So D, if I went up, if I boosted your ability by 2 points, you'd be at the ideal location. B, if I increased your perceived challenge by 2 points, you'd be at the ideal location. E, just stay on the heart line, 2 points, and you're out grid. So you know, you're all very, very close to that. And what that tells me is that when it comes to ensuring that your relationships are meeting your needs, you are very deliberate in who you choose to invest your time with. And that probably means that if it doesn't continue to serve you well, you're probably also far more willing to let the relationship go whatever direction it needs to go next because it's not with you. So,
Wow.
all right.
Very important stuff here.
Mhm. Now, again, if you're plotting a little more in grid, for example, Kathy's right on the green circle right there. So she's right at that border between really thinking about doing something more deliberate. Again, she's moving out grid. This is the driver energy coming into play. But she really isn't out here quite yet. So this would say that in whatever she was thinking at the time she filled out the change grid, she was going like, well, I'm getting ready. I'm darn close. Yeah, now let's get out here and get engaged. So Kathy, do you know what if anything, you were?
Yeah. No, I need to push myself on one or two of those.
Yeah, yeah, there's
No
work
doubt
to be
about
done.
it. No doubt
Yeah,
about it.
yeah. And you know, I know you're a busy person. Nobody wants to create more work for themselves. And so
Mhm.
sometimes you have to think like, is my best way of dealing with this particular relationship that isn't meeting my needs to go and have a conversation about that with whoever it is? Or is it better for me to just get too busy to do much, get distracted, you know, and it'll fall by the wayside all by itself? There's a strategy that's involved or that should be involved when it comes to dealing with whatever relationships are no longer meeting your needs. Okay, but the verb here
Mhm.
is ensuring. It's about being a good steward of your energies and your resources. Be that guardian. Yeah. Um, well, we got a few minutes. Let me take a look at one more. Maintaining open, honest, and candid and empathetic communication. So now we put those four together. In the strictest world of tension management, each one of those would be separate. So maintaining open communications could be very different than maintaining honest communications, maintaining candid communications, maintaining empathetic communications. So if we were
Mhm.
doing this as a deep dive into someone's performance or behavior set or whatever, you may very well find that there are people who are very open and very candid, but they're lying to themselves and everybody else, you know. So, and there are people who are open and honest and candid, but don't really care how it's received by anybody. And so we're just going here for a general sort of a thing, just quality communication with someone, in a relationship, as we've described it, a beneficial relationship. So, how do you go about maintaining open, honest, candid, and empathetic communications? Let's view the change grid. And interestingly enough, you guys average at the ideal location because we're saying this activity is really best done by a driven, amiable driver. Again, primary is driver, they're trying to make something happen. The secondary energy, though, is amiable. They're coming from a place of caring, a place of heart to really get this done. And the third energy is also driver. They're reminding themselves that even though, the amiable energy doesn't want to upset anybody, it doesn't want to cause friction, it doesn't want to do anything. It wants to maintain harmony and things be cooperative, come to everything from a place of care. But when you're here, you're going like, that's where I want to come from, but I got to get this done. I've got to get something to change. So you can hear that extra dose of driver energy that says, don't let your caring nature hold you back. You've got plenty of it. I don't think you could even be rude if you tried to be rude or disrupt things. It's just not where that energy is right now. So this is a lot of really good energy. So again, look at the activity again. Maintaining open, honest, candid, and empathetic communications. That's a wonderful place to be. Keep in mind, the word is maintaining. Maintaining. Didn't say delivering open, honest communicate. It says maintaining that. So there is some work to be done. That's why that driver energy needs to be primary. We got to get this done. This is an important element that's going on. Anyway, you guys are all close by. For whatever reason, Tom, you're ever so slightly further upgrade than all that. And again, being upgrade, by the way, he's very engaged in it. We look at the engagement rings, very engaged in it. But for whatever reason, he views the challenge as being a couple of points higher than everybody else. I would imagine that may mean there's specific, but in my role as a coach, I would do exactly what I'm about to do. So Tom, did you have something specific in mind when you answered that question?
Kind of the fact that I don't think very much people want to hear my opinions anyway.
So let me say
So
that's
it's
exactly.
a matter of when do I open my mouth or when do I keep it shut?
Yeah.
That I find.
I was actually hoping that's what you'd say, because what I wanted to say was that if we look at this more contextually, when it comes to interacting with the people who live in our community, again, I live in an over 55 community of some 35,000 people, if every house is filled, but it's a big, big population. It's a proper city. That I feel the same way Tom just said. I might hesitate to be open, to be honest, to be candid, and I might even be a little bit overly empathetic, because it's easier than trying to change the thoughts of people whose thoughts are etched in stone. As people get older, there are, what I would say, filters in your speaking fall by the wayside. And so you got to go like, who can you even have a completely open, honest, candid conversation with anymore? Everything seems to be so heightened, and and here's what ends up happening. Here you are as a person who's in power. It's people who in power are experiencing more confidence. They're feeling more on point, on target. This whole more logically ruled in what they're doing. There's lots of really wonderful, strong things that are happening here. They are not experiencing emotions that distort reality. So they're not way upgrade where fear and anger lives, and they're not downgrid where complacency and ambivalence lives. They're not in these two worlds. Well, can you imagine what life is like if you're one of these people in the ideal sort of spot, but everyone that you come in contact with on a routine basis is way up, angry about something, stressed about something, whatever it is, or way downgrade where they just plain don't care, and You know, they're ambivalent and whatever. So can you have a conversation with either of those two groups?
No, you
No.
can't. It's not
You know,
going to
you
be enjoyable.
Well, I
There
don't
you
even know if
go,
it's a
there you go.
conversation. Yeah, I don't even know if it's a conversation. If they're upgrade, you're going to listen to a vent session.
Hmm.
And if they're downgrade, you're going to lose interest way fast because they're not giving you anything to work with, or they may be so analytical in their nature, way down here in the danger zone, that all of their beliefs are etched in stone, that they're not upset about anything at all, but they believe what they believe, and no one's ever going to change anything about that. Meanwhile, the world keeps changing, but their whatever those attitudes, beliefs, behaviors are remain locked in
You know,
place.
T, this reminds me just how powerful relationships are. There's it's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, and
Mhm.
it's an 86-year study. So it started back in 1938 with just men, because only men were allowed at Harvard at the time. And then it went to their wives and children and grandchildren. They just kept it going. But they were studying what's the number one factor for happiness and longevity, and relationships was at the top.
Yeah.
They followed them throughout their career changes, you know, losing a spouse, all these various things. But the key factor that held them together throughout this 86-year study is all about the power of relationship.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right. That's been something that I think people have researched and published about for as long as I've been in this business. It's always been known that humans are a social kind of a creature. Yeah, some people are more extroverted, so they like to have a lot of social interaction, and others of us are more reclusive, and we're happy to have fewer but higher quality sorts of interactions with people. So, you know, you gotta get whatever it is that's right for you, and you'll be happy when you have the right amount of that. So, yep. Okay, well, this might be a good place for us to stop for today. So next time around, we can look at these other 5 activities. This is where the actions actually are going to start happening. So if you want to fix whatever this is, you want to do the work of advancing, curtailing, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's things you're going to have to do. And this might be where they get more problematic. If you guys have not had the opportunity yet to complete the ChangeWorks profile, please take a moment and do complete it, and we'll have your data added to this pool for our next discussion. Final thoughts, comments, anyone?
Very helpful, useful.
I'm so glad.
Great session, T.
All righty.
Thank you.
Okay. Everyone
Thank
take care. Bye for now.
Thank
Happy
you.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Double donuts, double donuts.
Hey, T, if you've got sunglasses or proper glasses, we're under a partial eclipse.
Well, that's what I was just noticing. I'm going to go out there and look now. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.